Always the way.
Do it.
Always the way.
Okay, so I'll tell you what I've done. I just hit record. So if it freezes for anybody, you'll at least hear who's not freezing. So this is Dr. Deb Carlin here this morning for the Missouri Venture Forum. We've got so many people on this call that we decided only to have the early birds appear on camera. So the 4,000 people who are in the chat room, you know, you're welcome to chat with us in there. And we were talking about connectivity here this morning. I'm going to introduce our guest before I go off on a little tangent here. We've got Jonathan Allen, the really superstar, in my opinion, award-winning guy who is EQ, who's going to talk to us about not only EQ, but I have been on a secret mission to get an alignment between Missouri Venture Forum and EQ because I like to line up with genius, you know? And so when I find it, I'm not letting go. So we were also talking about connectivity and what's going on in our world right now, that when you get on the internet, so like during this Zoom call this morning on a Friday morning, we've had a couple of people freezing up. And one of the things we were talking about was boosters. So here's just a tip from Missouri Venture Forum. You can go onto Amazon and put in the search bar that you need a booster for Internet Authority. And you'll see little thumb drives that you can get that you plug into the USB port on your computers, laptop or desktop, and I have found that to be really effective. And there's a little antenna that comes with some of them for your desktop that really boosts it. The other thing is if you call your internet provider, and in my case I've got a bundle, so it's the internet, the landline, and the television, and then I also call my cellular phone provider, and they give me additional modems, additional it's like having your own cell tower, and you put it into a window. It's about the size of a thick mailing envelope, business size mailing envelope, and you have to put it in a window. And you really get some boosted authority. So I think all of us, you know, as they're putting up the 5G towers, our service gets interrupted because they're playing with the signals. They're upgrading the systems that plays with their signals. And we've got so many people now working from home and working on networks that are different, and just doing so much more internet work and Zoom work in particular, that the bandwidth is really competitive. So I'm glad we're here at all. Jonathan, you're pretty techie. Did I miss anything, or that's not your bandwidth?
Well, you know, you made a point about 5G. One of the interesting things about 5G is going to be that, you know, yeah, you're going to have millions of little kind of responders and signal slinging all over the place. So it'll be interesting how, you know, remote work changes with 5G, because that's gonna like automate all of these things. Like right now, one of the other kind of pressures on bandwidth is, well, say like I've just recently got one of those automated vacuum cleaner robots.
Oh yeah.
And they're amazing. They're brilliant.
Yeah, they are brilliant.
But it's funny, now we have like so many devices on our networks that we just didn't have before, you know? So little things like that, I've suddenly found like, oh, you hit your kind of connection limit on the number of devices on your network.
Oh, interesting.
More quickly.
You know what? I didn't even think about the little robot being on the network.
Yeah, no, your robot, if you've got like automated weighing scales, you know, which people do on the network, your video game consoles are on the network, your iPhone, your smartwatches, your fridge, just tons of things are on the network.
Right.
And, you know, yeah, they all just kind of erode. Well, I don't know. I don't know how networks work beyond that, but generally there's a lot more going on than there was before.
So there's a lot of controversy about the 5G networks too.
Well, I was just thinking that the other interesting thing is, you know, Donald Trump's now going to ban TikTok. And, you know, if you think about, you know, the worry is like that's an app that is used for spying. But Zoom is from China. And, you know, that could all be happening through Zoom too. It's ironic, really, like what a complete sort of, I mean, Zoom's been great, right? And actually Zoom has responded to a lot of like criticisms of it very
Yes, they
quickly.
have. Right.
But it's kind of amazing. We had Skype, we had Google Hangouts, we had plenty of like European and American companies doing video calling, and they just completely missed this window. And Zoom won. And it won for just such a basic reason. You could send a link and join a video call room.
Yes. Yeah, I
All
found
of the other things have that ability, but they just hid it away, you know?
Yeah, right. Yeah, they made it complicated to get in.
Yeah, and even Zoom is a little bit complicated, but, you know, once you know where the link is, you're fine, you know?
Right, right. Okay, well, you know what? It is 7:56, and I'm thinking to myself, let's rock and roll. I want everybody to hear what it is that you're doing in your lovely life, and what kinds of things we can look at in terms of not just paying attention to what you're doing, but how it folds in to facilitate what we want for the Missouri Venture Forum very much, which is massive success so that we can be incredibly helpful to entrepreneurs.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you my big idea then. If
Okay,
that's
so
what you
without
mean.
further ado, begin the one, the only, Jonathan Allen, EQ. Yay!
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Well, it's really nice to see all of you on the chat as well, and I know a lot of you individually. But yeah, you know, the thing that EQ has, you know, EQ's come out of a kind of year-long sort of incubation where I spun out EQ from my agency into its own independent entity. And so one of the challenges I've had to kind of look at is how do you make media work in this, you know, online sort of environment.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, media is an interesting one because people expect media to break stories and, you know, compete for attention.
Yeah.
And that's quite difficult to do when you're like a one-man band. And your remit is something as kind of broad as innovation in St. Louis.
Yep.
And, you know, EQ was originally made to kind of amplify the voice of innovation in St. Louis. And in many ways, it's succeeded in its goal. Now, all the publications essentially amplify innovation. So, you know, St. Louis Magazine talks about it, the Post-Dispatch, the Business Journal, the Riverfront Times, like everyone's covering startups now. But one of the things that I guess I've kind of seen for EQ is that, you know, coverage of startups isn't the only thing. We generally need to kind of keep creating pathways to innovation in the community.
Say it again. We keep doing what kind of innovation?
We should keep creating pathways or pathways.
Oh, pathways. Okay, parkways. I love your British accent. Okay, parkways.
Yeah, so keep creating those kind of pathways into innovation.
Yeah.
And, you know, one of the big kind of challenges is like, if you run out of investor dollars, you know, can you keep innovation going? So I posted an article that's coming out this morning at 9 a.m. in the newsletter about how I believe spin-outs might be an interesting way to kind of keep promoting innovation. And spin-outs is a type of company that a startup that emerges from incubation within another company. So
Okay.
you spin out a department into its own company. And that's kind of what EQ is. It's spun out, it was like an innovation project inside a marketing agency, and now it's kind of spin out into its own brand. But yeah, my big thing is just trying to get people to cooperate. I think that local news becomes the lowest common denominator kind of problem when you follow it on social media or through mainstream media. And so the only way to kind of find unique stories and do unique things is, I think, through cooperation. So that's what I'm trying to do with organizations like the Missouri Venture Forum. I'm working with Dick and Mary even. Mary does a lot of wayfinding for the ecosystem. So the new platform kind of enables her to kind of create a sub-community on EQ. Dick does a lot around innovation districts, for instance, in downtown. So the new EQ kind of talks about that, but can create kind of little pockets of community.
Oh, how fabulous. So that people even know that those pockets exist.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
in a way, like right now, a lot of that is just content, but the guts of the platform actually kind of allow us to create followings for these issues, essentially. And if we were to do it any other way, it just becomes stories about either, the bad things that happen or the good things that happen.
Yeah.
And, EQ is leading the way on the stories of the good things that were happening. But now many organizations are doing that. But there are still many other things that need to happen to kind of just keep feeding innovation and entrepreneurship in St. Louis, So I'll give you another example. It's like, we're heading into recession, right? There's not going to be as much free cash kind of sloshing around as there was before. And part of the thing about startup ecosystems is like, there's tons of just free money sloshing around. Interest rates are so low in the bank that people are looking for to invest in startups and things like that. But as we sort of tighten our belts as a nation and as a global economy, that's all going to create less opportunities in the startup ecosystem,
Yeah.
But I think but if you stop innovating now, we don't complete the mission we started out on. And that was to sort of bring St. Louis into, out of the 1980s into the 2020s. And so the way to do it is to, we still have to create a culture of innovation at a city level, and actually not make innovation about how much venture capital you get as a company. Make it instead about your mindset,
Hallelujah. Thank you for that.
It's important, kids don't want to go and become locked into a job for the next 30 years, like people don't want the same things from their jobs that they wanted 30 years ago. A lot of kids now, a lot of people entering the workforce or kind of, in their 30s, they're building followings on social media. They're becoming like sort of rock stars in their careers.
Yeah.
And, the conventions of normal companies don't really support that,
Right. You've got to be really careful with that. Well, as a lifelong entrepreneur and coming from 3 generations of entrepreneurs, I always thought it was funny when people would go to work, because it looked to me like, wow, so you have to be there at a certain time and then stay there, and then they tell you how much money they're going to pay you? What if you want more? What if you have other things you want to do? And so, that kind of thinking is just my first nature. It's not even second nature. It's my first nature. But the thing that has always concerned me about entrepreneurship and particularly in St. Louis is that it does get tied to, well, how many dollars did you get? As opposed to, and then people get into the wrong mindset of thinking, well, I'm not going to be successful. I'm not going to earn anything until I have investors. No, no. You get out of the gate figuring out how you're going to grow this, and you start making a few dollars, then more and more and more, and then you make yourself really alluring, and you know what you're doing, and then the investment dollars come, right?
It's all mindset. All of that is mindset. Like, you know, there's that whole, you know, entrepreneurs are born not made, or that perennial debate, but it sort of doesn't really matter. What we need to do is just keep creating the mindset around, because that entrepreneurial mindset is really good in business anyway, you know. And that entrepreneurial mindset is the only way to keep evolving a lot of the big companies that are already in St. Louis and headquartered in St. Louis, you know. And it's that mindset that attracts new talent as well to the region. So we absolutely have to keep cultivating that mindset. And my belief is if you make entrepreneurship, if you reduce entrepreneurship to pitch decks and investors, we have lost the real talent of it, you know. And that's where I think EQ still has a role to play, because, you know, another part of the entrepreneurial mindset is like lifelong learning. So advocating for, you know, people just kind of learning new skills, whether that's around selling, managing employees, all of these things. And a lot of like our best insights come from collisions, you know.
Yeah, right.
And
Serendipity.
yeah, and all of that just kind of needs to be maintained. And in a way, one of the challenges with it is that a lot of it loses momentum when you lose kind of investor dollars from the ecosystem.
Right.
But if you can kind of keep that mindset alive, eventually, you know, the economy bounces back, the investor dollars come with it. And now's the time to kind of like hold the line for that future kind of wave of investment.
So let me ask you this. When we're talking about mindset, and good morning, Bill Bates. Nice to have you here with us today.
Morning. Sorry I'm late.
Nope, you're never late. You're always just perfect. The thing that I wonder about in terms of all of this, and I'm glad to hear what you're saying in terms of entrepreneurship and not reducing it to just pitch decks and not just being able to get the venture capital. Although Missouri Venture Forum was really put together so that entrepreneurs had a place to come and pitch their stuff and see if they could get investors. It really is much broader than that. It always has been. It was just that it was quiet, the courtship. You know, it was gentlemen who were leading it. And I say that way in particular. Yes, they were gentlemen, but they were gentlemen who, when I went there 30 years ago, were really good to me and privately mentored and tutored me. And I learned all kinds of things about my mindset. One of the things that there's been an interesting resistance to this. And Jonathan, I really want to hear your thoughts about this. When I came in to lead the Missouri Venture Forum out of a collapse, I said, you know, one of the things that I see that we need to do is we need to broaden the base. So it's not just agriculture, it's not just pharmaceutical, it's not just IT, technical kinds of things. There's a much broader bandwidth of entrepreneurship, and me included, with all the different ventures that I participate in. And we also need to, you know, look at social entrepreneurship and things like that. And then we need to look at not just the people who are the startups and who are in their 20s. There are people who are in their 60s and in their 70s and their 50s who want to do something different. They've got tremendous talent, but they've never been an entrepreneur, and so they don't know exactly how it is that they can walk into this. And so, and then good morning, Joseph Sorian. Nice to
Good
see you.
morning.
How are you?
Doing so far, doing all right. It's Friday.
Great. So, as we're talking about this entrepreneurship, it's broad based, and the vertical structure of it too, in terms of where you come in, is very different. So not everybody who comes in needs the money. They just really need to have the community, and that's what you're talking about with EQ. And I love the way that you have this ability to you seem to know, every time we talk, you seem to know where all these pockets are, like you were talking about with Dick Fleming, where there's activity that's taking place that I certainly am not on the front lines of knowing about. So if you take all of those components together, we've, I think, got a winning formula for not just alignment between EQ and Missouri Venture Forum, but to really enhance and make more vibrant our entrepreneurial community in St. Louis and in the region.
Yeah, can I mention something about that? I mean, that's exactly what you just said is exactly right. There's pockets of innovation happening all over the city and the region.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons why EQ can't take the position of like being the Business Journal or the Post Dispatch or St. Louis Magazine is I don't think EQ's role should be the kingmaker of entrepreneurship. Instead, it needs to build a community and essentially bubble up all of the things that are happening.
Yeah, I agree.
And sort of be equal opportunity about it. Yeah. And celebrate the fact that people are just trying. I mean, that's another aspect of entrepreneurship, right? A mindset of entrepreneurship is the idea that failure isn't the end of the world. You can't really fail in your day job. Like, that can be quite costly. But failing as an entrepreneur, honestly, sometimes that's the best thing that can happen to you, because you suddenly realize you can't afford to keep paying for XYZ,
Yeah, the implications of anything on a downturn are felt immediately. My favorite way that I've heard of failure being described is it's a perfect opportunity for a comeback.
Yeah.
It's like, turn around quick. You can't survive if you got to keep it going. So I appreciate you making mention of that. So would you talk a little bit more about, because you and I have spent a lot of time together over this last, not even quite a year, but for a long period of time, pre-2020 reality, when things were different, thank goodness. And we were talking about EQ and your vision of revibratizing it and what you've done now. And by the way, the links that everybody's got on the constant contact that they got announcing this meeting, please use them, because the opportunity that Jonathan is affording you to become a free member and to do some advertising for that first 30 days. I mean, I went in there and I thought, there's a whole world inside of this EQ here. It's so neat. So talk more about that and what you've created and how that's just really, what's the architecture in the process?
Yeah, okay. So do you know how a normal news media or B2B magazine works?
No.
In terms of a business. All right. No. So one of the things that media does is it owns the audience, and essentially the way it owns the audience pre-internet was you would become a dentist or a doctor or a lawyer, and suddenly you would get subscribed to what's called a closed circulation magazine, and you'd get an accounting magazine in your inbox or something like that. And that media company would be able to say, it could never say whether anyone read the magazine because it was paper. It couldn't be tracked in any way. But what they could say is, we have all this data on this audience. It's definitely accountants or doctors or dentists reading our magazine. And that was sufficient enough to bring audience advertisers in. Fast forward, to 2020 and the internet and social media. Now audiences are completely fragmented. We don't have this kind of stable identity as a media company around our readers, right? They're just cookies now. And they come in from every direction. I say that, you know, media now, the way media works is like audiences are like Santa Claus. They come through the chimney and the window, anything but the front door. Whereas in the old days, you know, in print, they come through the front door.
Yeah.
So what EQ is trying to do is say, well, if we can't understand the audience anymore without using things like surveillance technology, like cookies and stuff like that, which is all kind of stuff we've generally accepted, then what are other ways to understand our audiences? So one of the things that you'll see is when you become a member is that there's a kind of app store of different features. There's training courses, there's ways to upload advertising, post job ads, post event ads, all these kind of things. And all of those things are linked to your profile. And that's all what is called permission-based data. So what I'm trying to do with EQ is say, look, I don't know who these people are, but what I do know is what their needs are. 20% of them are posting events and hosting events. You know, 30% are posting jobs. Another 10% are doing sales training online, whilst another are doing hiring online. And all of that data tells us something about kind of the maturity of the ecosystem and the general health of the ecosystem.
Now, wait a second. You know all that because you're gathering data as they're signing up.
Yeah, and I'm gathering it in a what's called permission-based way. So with cookies, essentially you've given permission without realizing, and it's sort of tracking you all the way through.
Okay.
But whereas with something like EQ or social networks, what happens there is that's application data. So it's all permission-based. Like, you know when you're uploading an event to EQ, you know when you're posting an ad. So rather than, so in that sense, the permission's given and we're all aware of like what's happening. But I'm essentially trying to use that data to kind of to create kind of what's called data exhaust around the health of the ecosystem.
Okay.
So my hope is, you know, once the community starts to be built and is using all of the tools, we can start to say things as a community, like this many jobs were created in downtown St. Louis, this many jobs in Clayton, this many jobs in Columbia, even as we expand. You know, there are 15% of downtown St. Louis is learning, you know, how to hire or hosting an event and things like that. And all of this kind of data exhaust becomes like a way to talk about the region and the growth of the region in a way that isn't simply investor dollars, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like capture all the qualitative metrics that also tell us, you know, how the business ecosystem is evolving. And obviously, so that's what's going on at a technology level. At a reader level, it's the same. You're getting stories, and now you're getting advertising, and you know, and nothing's much changed. So it's like if you want to get, if you just want the benefits of being a passive consumer, that's all there. But if you want to be more involved, you can take advantage of all of this structure. And part of that is we're creating a data commonwealth. So I'll give you another idea about that. So once we know, you know, how much activity is happening in the ecosystem, that creates this commonwealth of data that other organizations can target. But now we can consciously target them and deliberately target them rather than unconsciously do it. So I'll give you, one last example and then I'll stop talking.
You don't have to stop talking. I'm just going to try to pause you every now and again. Keep going.
But I'll give you one example, say with the MVF, right? We can have, you know, people can register for EQ and register for MVF events.
MVF has in the forum, Missouri Venture Forum.
Missouri Venture Forum.
Right,
and all of the Missouri Venture Forum events can go through the system, and they go to their own members, but we can also pull in from additional members into the ecosystem, into the thing. And eventually we can do other things like say, this many people came to the venture capital event via the Missouri Venture Forum. And of that, this many people identified themselves as wanting capital and seeking capital. And then we can build automations in partnership with MVF and your members to reach those people. So any of your members that say, I want to invest, then we can segment that and pair them.
That's amazing. Yeah. So when you're talking about the membership, you're talking about, you know, the various categories of membership. I'm very conscious that as people are listening, to try to get a visual of what you're talking about in terms of the structure of how people get involved. If you walk into EQ using the link that you provided for the meeting today, people go online and they're seeing this whole number of different icons that they can click on to travel where they want to go, and it's topical and it's platform. So do you want to hear something? Do you want to visit something? Do you want some training? Do you want some interaction? Do you then inside of that world of EQ have different levels of how people can either become members, or everything is, you know, a la carte menu, or is it free versus paid advertising or sponsorship? How does that work?
It's basically a la carte, and it's essentially, you know, your app store on your phone. You know, you want your contacts app, or you want your calendar app, or your to-do list app, or whatever it is. Yeah. It's a bit like that. So it's organized with functions. What do you want to do?
Right.
And currently, it's relatively flat. There are different membership levels, but actually the base, the free membership level, you can do all of the same things as the other paid membership levels. The only real difference is that it's one self-service and the other is more like white glove service or concierge service. Mm-hmm. So on the concierge stuff, that's where you pay, but that's where I'm working with you as a writer, or I'm working with the goals of your business to use the platform well, you know.
I would say I'm honored to have been one of his first members.
Yeah,
recommend it.
And what was the engagement? Can you talk about that?
Well, the engagement in this particular case was I was intrigued with the packaging that Jonathan had done that built off of his experience over the past 2 years here in St. Louis. And a very specific occasion for us to work together was sadly John Lewis's passing, and we talked about since I knew John in my Atlanta days, I worked with Jonathan to post a tribute to John Lewis on EQ. And interestingly enough, Jonathan, I've now gotten inquiries from Atlanta to do a version of that article in
the freezing.
But yeah, so
sadly my keeps freezing, so I don't know if you got all of that.
Yeah, so you've been contacted by Atlanta to do a version of where?
Of the article that I did for Jonathan in EQ. What was that, last week, I guess?
Yeah, last
week. Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, that's great. So that speaks to the reach.
Essentially, so yeah, Dick and I worked together to post an article on EQ, and we talk about what we wanted in the article.
Yeah.
What he wanted to cover, what I thought readers wanted to hear about, and then published it through EQ. It automatically goes to our newsletter and online, and then he also posted it on LinkedIn too. so you can maximize the complete reach of it. And that's the thing, that's the kind of interaction people can have, you know. Say you're an expert in accounting, say there's MVF like lawyers or accountants, you know, I can say to you, and they say to me, I want to reach people on this topic. I can say, well, what the Data Commonwealth that EQ has says is people want to know about bookkeeping tips for startups. They want to know about legal advice for founding a company and all of this stuff. And I've got data that can prove that people want this stuff. So it means you're not kind of screaming into a void. You're getting a kind of useful indicator of where to start with engaging the community.
And it doesn't matter where in the country you are. You have the ability to hook in. And that's one of the things I love about the relationship between Jonathan and I for both Missouri Venture Forum and for EQ is we're looking beyond our box here. You know, like I'm sitting in this little square here on Zoom, and I want to reach beyond the box and be able to reach as many entrepreneurs as possible. Even though our passion is for Missouri, we are the show me state. So I take it seriously that part of our job is to really show as many people across this great country, especially in 2020, how amazing entrepreneurship is. How if we all exercise our entrepreneurship, particularly at this point, we can get out of the stuck place that we are as a culture. And
yeah. Well, so Mary put a kind of message in the chat about, you know, companies need customers and it's easier to get funding when you don't need it. And in a way, I think that's the thing that makes me passionate about St. Louis, Missouri, and, you know, similar states and cities, is that, you know, the internet kind of turned the whole world into try to be San Francisco. And actually, what if you don't try and be that? What if you just try and be your own state, be your own city, and just educate everyone to buy each other's services, you know? Then you don't even need venture capital. Cash flow is sufficient to start building companies and hiring. You know, cash flow is king. And that's kind of what keeps me going with EQ is, I think St. Louis does a good job of kind of, you know, aspiring to its own kind of self-realization, you know, as a startup ecosystem. And I actually think that every major city around the world is going to have to do this, you know. We can't all be New York, London, or San Francisco. You know, there has to be room for Nashville, you know, Bradford in the UK, you know, Sao Paulo in Brazil. There needs to be kind of business happening in all these other cities. And actually, you know, a lot of our global politics, whatever side of it you stand on, a lot of the global politics right now are due to the hollowing out of local economies as a result of the internet, you know? And if there's one kind of vaguely good thing that's coming out of the pandemic, is making everyone realize we don't need to be economically migrating all the time, you know? I saw some nods, so I thought.
I'm muting and unmuting because I have a mascot that is a lawnmower. And it's like a barking dog. So when the barking happens, I'm muting myself. So it's not that I don't have a lot to say here. So yeah, I like that. I like that thinking. And I think that, you know, speaking of mindset, every time there's something that's a challenge that is stressful, that's overwhelming to us, all we have to do literally is pivot, you know, pivot in our thoughts and get creative and open those doors. So when we were talking earlier and you were saying, you know, this recession is coming. Well, right now, there's also people who have got cash and they really are excited about, I want to do something with it because I'm so upset about our national and global situation. I want to invest. I want that I want that energetic, creative rush, and I want to place it into people and projects that give me hope.
Yeah.
And I think that that's a fabulous thing that the Missouri Venture Forum can do for our culture right now. And in alignment with EQ, we can really have that reach be so much more broad than what we've got right now. Absolutely.
I mean, can I just do a shout out to every member of the Missouri Venture Forum? I mean, one of the things that I think, you know, the Missouri Venture Forum is the long memory of entrepreneurship in St. Louis. And that is critically needed right now. You know, I don't want to be too negative here, or controversial, but, you know, we have amazing entrepreneur support organizations in St. Louis right now since 2013, but they're going to go through a huge wobble over the next 2 or 3 years.
Yep.
And you know, there are going to be big political changes in the conversation. I mean, we're even seeing it now. People don't really talk about startups anymore. They talk about, you know, something else. They've kind of tamped down the conversation around startups, and it's kind of pivoted to just geospatial and things like that. Now, all of that is good. Geospatial is extremely exciting for the region. It's an amazing opportunity, and, you know, Dick's been a big part of bringing that opportunity to St. Louis. But the long memory of entrepreneurship that the Missouri Venture Forum has is what we need. You know, everyone needs to be reminded that you can build businesses at any time. The building business comes down to kind of basic principles, just fundamentals, and you have to have that staying power. And it's not always just a matter of like right time, right place, you know?
Right. One of the things that I've absolutely loved about the Missouri Venture Forum, you know, we just celebrated our 35th birthday, so now we're 36. And so I hated it when my mother brought that to my attention, you know, when I said, oh, you know, I'm 50. And she said, actually, now you're 51. Oh, thanks. So one of the things that I really love about the Missouri Venture Forum is that people have told me repeatedly that this is the safe space, that it has always been the space where people come to find out what's going on, you know, who's doing what, and who do I need to talk to. So it's matchmaking at its finest, most sophisticated, most elegant, and we are matching people to others, even in this virtual Zooming that we've been doing from the very get-go. We have been able to match people with one another to facilitate good things happening. One of the first public appearances that I made was back last September and October and November with Missouri Lawyers Media doing a panel. And the audience, people were saying, I said, what is it that you need? And people were talking about what they needed. And I was like, hey, you over in that part of the room, and you over here, come, you know, sit closer. And we saw like 5 people get matched. And it's been productive for them. Somebody needs an attorney, somebody needs the accountant. So you're absolutely right. There is no such thing as prime time, and then is the worst time, because there's needs for all the creative solutions that we have, right? Zoom started a long time ago. I've been doing Zoom for as long as it's been around. There's never been a wrong time for Zoom, except right now for our sanity, so that we have collegiality and social distancing without feeling like we can't touch each other. You know, I can actually touch all of you right now. You know, we need Zoom for camaraderie. I mean, everybody is feeling the insulation and the isolation and the loneliness, but the more vibrant we make our interactions while we're here, and it's one of the things I really like about what you've done with EQ, Jonathan, it comes alive while you're in that space. You don't feel like you're sitting in there alone, and thank you for that. I think you did a great job.
Jonathan and Deb, if I might connect a couple of threads of points that both of you have made earlier.
Please.
in terms of mindset and connectivity. I've been informally working with a fellow at the Milken Institute, their lead person in Washington, on a modest tag-on to what is still trying to be the third or fourth stimulus bill. This would focus on resilient infrastructure. And in the course of working with him, he reconnected me with the guy that we used at RCGA as a consultant years ago. Both of you may have run across him, Joel Kotkin. Joel is an economist, demographer, and writes for Forbes and the New York Times. But I had an hour and a half call with Joel on Wednesday, along with a colleague who had headed research for Milken for 20 years, about an effort that I think both Missouri Venture Forum and EQ could logically connect to and enhance what you're doing here in Missouri and in St. Louis. And it's called Heartland Forward. It's a 501c3 economic renewal. They describe themselves as a think and a do tank. It's created by the Walton children. Their board is the Walton kids. And their latest publication is called Does Geography Determine Destiny? And their previous publication in June was Millennials Find New Hope in the Heartland. And they defined the heartland as 20 states, including us, in the middle of the country. And their whole predicate is in focusing on some of the bread and butter issues of knowledge base and inclusive growth and health outcomes and job creation. The 20 heartland states can become the go-to places in much the way both the Venture Forum and EQ have talked about the potential we have for St. Louis. And I couldn't agree with Jonathan more. It's got to be more than geospatial and plant and life sciences. As great as that is, it's got to be much bigger, because they publish a thing annually now called Dynamic Metros within those 20 states. There are 330 of those metros. Columbia, Missouri is number 62, pretty good. Kansas City is 109, pretty good. Springfield is 140, pretty good. St. Louis is 228. The only way to go is up. We need to kind of create that mindset that both of you were talking about. And I think a linkage from both of your organizations, I'll be glad to facilitate an introduction to their folks, because I think you both can be partners to them in terms of what's happening in St. Louis and in Missouri.
This is so exciting. Thank you for that. I thought my day was already made because Jonathan woke up and got here and y'all have showed up. But I got to tell you, that is spectacular. You know, those of you who are on the E-list, and all of you obviously are, though otherwise you wouldn't be here, know that I've written a couple of communications saying, help, we're at the bottom here. We need help. Come on, we got to go. And every now and again, it's only happened 3 times that I've thought to myself, what am I doing? Why do I care about the Missouri Venture Forum? And then I go, oh, no, wait, I didn't mean it. I do. I know exactly why. We need this. Our culture needs this, our community, and not just St. Louis. I'm a Chicago, St. Louis girl my whole life. I've been traveling back and forth in both of these cities. And people in Chicago know about the Missouri Venture Forum, and they're going, where? Missouri? It's the show me state, Chicago. Quit being sassy about it. The Midwestern values and what we do in the core of this country is so essential. And I love the way that you articulated it, Dick. If it's the language of that Heartland group, or if that was yours, when they're talking about, you know, the kids, that family, when you're talking about the bread and the butter. You know, one of the things that America needs more now than ever before is we need basic core values, domestic language. Say what? Oh, Joe was talking to somebody else.
On that, no, you know,
to his wife.
One of the things.
Hi, Mrs. Sorian. Hi. Thanks for letting Joe be with us today. You know, I've tried to pull Joe in so much to the Missouri Venture Forum, and God bless him, he says things like, I don't know, I got to talk to my wife. I was really in over the top for a long time. I need to send her a thank you note. But we absolutely need in our culture more now than ever to understand it. And by the way, Jonathan, you mentioned this a minute ago. The positive outcomes of what has happened here in 2020, and there's a lot of them. I mean, I make house calls. I've never stopped making house calls and facility calls and office calls, and people have said, you know, I never really liked being at home, but I have this beautiful home, and I just have realized it's not bad being stuck here. It really is lovely. Yeah. And what else did you learn? Oh, you're actually using the kitchen table for meals together. You're actually cooking here. You're actually spending time. You don't need to be running all the time. America has had an opportunity to get invited to settle down, by the way, to read EQ, to read your emails, to read your books, to read your communications, and quiet down and get focused, because our mindset absolutely is everything. Joe, I'm asking you to unmute. You're muted, Joe. Sorry.
I know I was.
Okay.
I was talking to my wife again. I'm sorry about that.
Oh, I was reading your lips. I thought you were trying to communicate with us. So
But, you know,
I'm delighted about all this. Go ahead, Jonathan. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
no, like, you know, I love what, you know, what Dick just said and you just said. I mean, the thing is this is the most fertile ground for entrepreneurship. You know, one of the things I often say about St. Louis is like, all of the major problems that you might want to solve in the world exist right here on your doorstep.
Yeah,
and there's a pretty strong community that you can reach that is there and committed to helping you solve them, you know?
Go ahead.
Well, it's like urban-rural divides, you know? Everything happening here is a microcosm of what is happening in the rest of the world.
Yeah.
And you know, to your point about what's happening now, it's like the great acceleration. I think we are in this great acceleration, and you know, we're looking at a huge climate crisis. You know, we're looking at you know, kind of socio-political crisis. There's a lot of kind of crisis that's just we've accelerated into right now. And you know, there's two responses. One is like panic about it, and the other is like get in action. And it's not like we don't have tons of research to draw on and tons of resources. And actually now, you know, there's this kind of great equalization that's sort of happening. I mean, it's also unequal and that needs to be fixed too. But it's like, you know, we're going to have to create new jobs out of nothing. And the way we do that is by harnessing all of the knowledge that's been kind of created but ignored over the last kind of 20 years, you know. I'll tell you one thing like that I've been getting excited about is this thing called environmental accounting. And it's an investment thesis that's coming out of some major investment firms that are saying, let's look at the impact, the cost to the environment of these operations, and not just measure their profit, but measure their cost, their environmental cost, and then rate investments against that. And it's like adding this kind of layer of bureaucracy is actually potentially really, really powerful, because it's going to, you know, help people pull together around, you know, what to invest in the future and things like that. So there's a lot of new ideas that now is the time to just try them out. We have literally nothing to lose, you know? And in a way, we had almost too much momentum before. Like you couldn't not do what everyone else was doing, because the cost of not following everyone else was extremely high. Now the cost of going it alone is the same as following everyone else. So you really have a choice.
I've for Missouri Venture Forum, both felt sorrow over this period of time and then rejoiced because it has allowed me to have more private connections, more thought time, more time to process and look and stand back and see, okay, instead of thinking about actually physically running to these places and events and people, when you sit still and you do this, you get an energetic save from the whole thing. Oh, we got more people coming. They must have heard us. So we have somebody else. Dave B is joining us. It's like the mystery guest before they come.
That's Dave Blankenship.
Hallelujah. Did you guys rendezvous and decide to come?
I didn't. He had to make that decision on his own.
So Dave Blankenship, are you there with us? I'm asking you to unmute.
He's a veteran of these.
Yes.
Yeah, he is. So I, it's funny, always coming into Chicago from St. Louis and talking about the other city to the other city. When people have asked me about in Chicago about St. Louis, I say, just keep your eyes open because we really are the show me state. There's a lot of things that take place there. And then they'll say, well, what is it that you like about St. Louis? I'm born and bred in Chicago and I love it. Grew up in the city and it's wonderful, cultural and the lakefront and all that good stuff. Good morning, Dave.
Good morning. I'm shirtless. Excuse me.
Good thing we don't have
Tarzan.
We'll get down a little further here.
I didn't know that was allowed.
Further. There we go. Now you can't really tell, can you?
Yeah, I'm the real talking head. That's hilarious. Well, I
Really,
was
Venture
just,
Forum's got it going on.
Dave, your timing couldn't be better. I was just talking about Missouri being the show me state. I didn't get that literally.
I am the living example.
Yeah, right. But the thing that I say about Missouri that I really do truly love is Chicago gets described as being really friendly, and it's true. It is. There's a real spiritedness up here. But St. Louis, to me, as a Chicagoan, is so Southern and so genteel and so quintessential. And I mean that in every respectful way. And there's a warmth there and a familiarity. And, people say, well, isn't it cliquish? I mean, there's like old money and people have been there forever. No, not at all. I don't find boundaries between people. If you're nice, you walk in and you want to participate. There's just a wonderful, friendly atmosphere in St. Louis. So right now, no matter what else is going on,
We're playing the Cubs tonight, so the critical question is, who are you rooting for, Deb?
Oh, my friend, do you see the blue on the couch there? There's only one team. Come on. Every other baseball team in the country is just jealous of the Cubs. And
I think
there's a resistance. You all want to root for the Cubs. I know it.
the Cubs need to give us runs since we're so COVID depleted.
Actually, people might get mad at me, but I don't really care. I don't like professional sports right now. I don't like fake stadiums, and I don't like the idea of setting it up to put in fake noise to pretend that people are really there. I want all of us to just get well, be healthy, and then start the seasons and be for real again.
That's
my
far
hope.
better than being a Cubs fan.
Yeah, the obstinate, right? The aggressive Chicago in me comes out. Well, you all have been absolutely lovely. And Jonathan, we've got about 10 minutes left. I want to make sure that you are totally heard, but I also want our audience here to have some time to ask you questions. And maybe you and I can finish up with talking about the ways in which we've been talking about an alignment and integration between Missouri Venture Forum and EQ. So does anybody have questions right now?
I wonder if Jonathan could have you email us some flyers about EQ, what it's about, etc. As background information on which we can.
There's a great link on the page. You can join EQ and
You mean on the
set up a
constant
profile and do all kinds of stuff there. Yeah, it's
you
a
mean
neat
the constant contact that he sent out. But Jonathan, let's hear from you in answer to Joe.
Well, if there's something.
Well, I guess my tagline is, we're not here to make the world a better place. We're trying to make our place a better place. So, what comes with that is storytelling, cooperation, and collaboration. So it's kind of three things. It's a program for everyone to learn from each other, a platform for everyone to connect, and then a publication for everyone to share stories and.
Okay.
I'll tell you what I'm going to do on the back end of this meeting today is I'm going to take the constant contact news blast that I sent out, and I'm going to send each of you information and say, I would love it if you would share this and put it out there. And Joe, I think that that'll address what it is that you're asking for. And by the way, this episode is recorded, and so we'll have this shared. I have to post it to a couple of different places. I'll let you know where it gets posted to. So people can get the direct learning over the course of the hour that we were together here. Would that help, Joe?
Sure enough.
Okay, great. Who else has a question? Bill, we haven't heard much from you. You're so silent there.
I usually just listen the first time I join a group just to get a flavor.
Okay, great. Well, it's great to have you here. Welcome, welcome.
Thanks.
Do you know everybody in the room?
Oh, Joe Sorhan and I have known each other for probably 50 years.
Okay.
Or more.
Yeah, or more. He used to be one of my law firms many years ago.
Yeah.
And Dick and I run into each other occasionally, but I'm still working 6 days a week on my surgical instrument company, so I got to get them sold so I can get active with you guys.
And by the way, I'm so grateful to you for being here and for being a member. It's really nice to get people signed up. I really treasure that.
Well, I was one of the early members of MVF 35 years ago.
And so, by the way, we have people here today who have joined as members, and I really appreciate it. And I invite and encourage each one of you. The membership structure is such that you can select what level you want to be at. But we really need the support financially and intellectually and socially. So it's deeply appreciated every time you participate. Dave, what do you got to say for yourself down there?
I want to apologize to Bill again. I think when we had our massive membership down at the Motorcycle Museum, I stepped on his toe one time and I had to reach out to him and apologize. And I apologize to all people that will watch this, since you're going to post everything, that everybody's got to see my shoulders. It's great seeing my good friend Joe, of course. Mary, it's good seeing you. Good seeing
Dave, you should be where I am. Your shoulders would work here.
And of course, it's wonderful seeing Dick, and I've had wonderful conversations with him, and everything he does, including the new hospital in our city that he's been involved with. So I'm honored, and then of course Jonathan, who I've had a few lovely conversations with, and I think he's added a whole lot to this city with EQ.
Yeah, you bet. Yeah, thank you for that, Dave. But I'll tell you what, Jonathan, it was, we've been getting to know each other over the last year, but it was so much fun when I was doing the write-up about you for the news. I'm looking at this thinking, as I got done putting it together, after I'm reading all of his accomplishments and everything that he's done, he answers the phone and I said, "Thank you. You're my friend." You're so impressive and accomplished. Let me climb into your brain like forever, because you've got so much in there, so much to share. And I know that each one of us who have sat here and listened to him talk today hear out of him this incredible reach. Jonathan, your mind is so expansive and your perspective is so high level and so down to earth at the same time. Your compassion and your insight and your academic ability to really tie things together, and you're a voracious reader. It's amazing the way that you are so alive and vibrant, and I'm very grateful. I'm very grateful that you want to participate with me.
Well, thanks. And seriously, you guys as well. You've all heard me out. I mean, we've had loads of conversations, as Dave said, with all of you. And yeah, I really appreciate you guys kind of hear these ideas. It makes me feel less crazy, So today you've definitely, you guys have all made me think like, okay, like there's some nods here, like maybe this isn't such a bad idea, because
yeah, it's a great idea.
And it's really fun to be able to talk about this stuff, and it's really good, again, like the long memory of investors in St. Louis and the long memory of MVF. It makes me happy, and I'll tell everyone about it, that we had these conversations and everyone was like super interested. I mean, no one was asking me like what my revenue was or any of that. Instead, you were just like completely engaged in the concepts. So I kind of really hope that we can do something and maybe do another event, a different format that isn't, that maybe later in the day that brings in other audiences into this conversation with you guys.
Oh, Jonathan, I knew you'd want it later in the day.
I mean, yeah, I'm doing all right at this time, better than I thought I would do. But
no,
yeah.
This is great. This is great.
Jonathan, are you doing Bourbon Fridays?
Yeah, we're doing Bourbon Fridays. Yeah, maybe, that would be a good idea.
That would be great.
You guys come to Bourbon Friday.
That would be great.
Similar to this, yeah.
All right, I'm going to bring this to a close. Bless each one of you for being here today. I'm grateful, and come back again and again, and you'll be getting an email on the back end of this saying thank you for being here and for participating. And I'll keep talking with each one of you, and Jonathan will collaborate, and cooperate. As a matter of fact, Jonathan's going to be on my show this afternoon at 2 o'clock. That's on Blog Talk Radio, and we're talking about Freedom Fridays, and we're talking about collaboration and cooperation. And that'll be posted on all of my social media assets, all of his. And so stay tuned, a lot to come, okay? All right, so thank you, folks.
See you all again.
Yep.
Bill, good to see you again.
Go Cardinals.
Go Cubs. Sorry. Last word from Missouri Venture Forum. We love baseball. Peace out, everybody.
See you all later.
Bye.
Meet you all.